Do you want to play Renekton? Do you want to win every game as Renekton? Do you want to get Renekton best build? Then you are at right place. In League of Legends, Wild Rift, Renekton is a fighter type who primarily plies his trade in the Baron lane, but he can also jungle if necessary. While we'll have to wait for the full release to see where he stacks up on our League of Legends Wild Rift tier list, we reckon he'll see plenty of use. In this guide, we're going to speculate on the Wild Rift Renekton release date, take a look at some potential builds for his various roles, and detail his skills to give you a good idea of how he'll play ahead as he has just been launched. If you're looking for decent Baron lane builds in the meantime, check out our Wild Rift Darius build and guides. Now, according to King, before we play him, we must know his abilities. So, Renekton's active and passive abilities. With his passive, Reign of Anger, Renekton's attacks generate Fury. This is enhanced when having low health. The Fury can boost his abilities with additional effects. Let's move on to his active skills. His first skill. Cull the Meek. Renekton swings his blade, dealing a moderate amount of damage to all targets around him, and heals an equal small portion of the damage dealt. If he has more than 50 Fury points, its damage and healing are increased. His second skill. Ruthless Predator. Renekton slashes his target twice, dealing moderate physical damage and stunning them for 0.75 seconds. If Renekton has more than 50 Fury, he will slash his target 3 times and destroy the target's damage shields, dealing high physical damage and stunning them for 1.5 seconds. His third skill. Slice and Dice. Renekton dashes towards the marked direction, dealing damage to all units in the path. If empowered, Renekton deals bonus damage and reduces the armor of enemies hit. And his ultimate, Dominus, Renekton transforms into the Tyrant, gaining bonus HP and dealing damage to surrounding enemies. While in this form, Renekton periodically gains Fury. For ability order. Level up Cull the Meek at level 1, and then you will continue leveling Cull the Meek until it's maxed. After that, you can start leveling up Slice and Dice followed by Ruthless Predator before playing Renekton. Knowing his strengths and weaknesses is a must. So, strengths. Renekton is one of the strongest early game champions in the game. You can use this advantage to gain a lead. Has tons of sustain in lane thanks to his Cull the Meek. The additional healing will make fights favored as he can heal back some of the damage taken. Once ahead, Renekton can constantly bully the enemy laner and over again and snowball his lead quickly. Make sure you keep playing around your cooldowns to further your lead. Now for weaknesses. Renekton relies heavily on his cooldowns to get a lead. Whenever his abilities are down, he is not really able to trade as much. Similarly, Renekton needs to play around his Fury bar to get the most damage out during a trade. If he fights without Fury or uses the wrong empowered ability, it can cost him the trade. Avoid using your empowered Slice and Dice, if possible. Renekton falls off in the later stages of the game, as he no longer has his early game strengths when the game goes longer. Additionally, he is really bad in the later stages of the game if he didn't get an early lead. Now, let's get to the main topic, which is Wild Rift Renekton Guide. Best items, spells, tips, gameplay, best runes, tricks. For runes we will be taking Conqueror, which triggers on successful skill combos and trades, dealing bonus damage to affected enemies and increasing her burst damage. Then we will take Weakness, which increases your team's damage to opponents slowed or with crowd control effects. Then we take Hunter Titan, that grants bonus health and tenacity with unique takedowns. And lastly we will take Hunter Genius, that grants additional ability haste for each unique takedown. Mostly played in Baron lane, his summoner spells go hand in hand with his aggressive playstyle, as well as focus on his surprise attacks and great mobility. So for that we need to take Flash, which allows you to have more offensive options when entering combat, in addition to serving as an escape tool. And then take Ignite. And you should use it as a tool to finish off enemies in case they want to escape with low health, and to prevent strong healing effects from your enemies. The best items for Renekton. Renekton's items will be focused on maximizing his damage stats enough to become a threat for everyone, increase his defensive capabilities, and give him more tenacity to being unstoppable against his enemies. So, that's why we will be taking Black Cleaver, which grants bonus health and damage, as well as drastically reducing enemy armor with each attacker skill damage. Then we will take Death's Dance, that converts a percentage of the damage taken into delayed damage, giving you more room to be in the fight, along with his physical omnivampirism. Then we will take Sterak's Gauge, which grants additional health and a passive shield, which gives Renekton an advantage in fights, allowing him to stay in fight longer, with a great chance of emerging victorious. As he is squishy, we shall take Guardian Angel, as its revive effect allows you to fully attack squarely without risking giving away a kill along the way. While his key items are well defined, you will have two options to nurture his defense, whether you want to focus on increasing your physical or magical defense, but feel free to combine both types of items for special occasions. If you want to focus on armor, then you should go with Ninja Tabi with Teleport Enchant and Randuin's Omen or Mortal Reminder. And if you want to go with magic resistance, then take Mercury Threads with Teleport Enchant and Spirit Visage or Force of Nature. And this are other builds that you can try. And various more builds will start. Tips and tricks for Renekton. First, we begin by checking his early game. This champion is an early game bully. Play aggressive throughout the laning phase to get kills. If you can get a kill or two, you can snowball your lead pretty quickly. Whenever your ultimate Dominus is up, you can look for aggressive plays to try and kill the enemy. Your ultimate Dominus is a great trading tool which makes you much stronger. Keep the minion wave even or slightly closer to your side of the map early on. This will allow you to run the enemy down while protecting yourself from ganks. If you keep pushing when you're not ahead, you will be unable to run the enemy down, and you'll be an easy target for the enemy jungler. Now, mid-game. Split push during the mid-game and try to secure side objectives. Avoid grouping if possible. Use your strong dueling potential in the mid-game to fight and duel anyone who tries to stop you from split pushing. Although you're a really strong split pusher in the mid-game, be prepared to group with your team and fight 5v5. You should usually start grouping when there are no nearby objectives to take. I will show you tips on how to split push at end of the video. For late game. After going in with your ultimate Dominus, be prepared to fall back and peel for your allies in late game team fights. To make getting on the enemy backline easier, group with your team but stay off to the side. If you flank from an unwarded bush, the enemy will find it harder to react to your all-in. Avoid splitting or being away from your team in the late game, as the enemy will force a fight while you're gone. Play around your ultimate Dominus in the later parts of the game. Avoid fighting unless your ultimate Dominus is up. Fighting without it will make the late game team fights much harder. Delay fights and be prepared to disengage if it's still on cooldown. Now, for team fighting. General tips. Look for team fight opportunities when your aura and ultimate are up. Consider split pushing when they are down. You should rarely team fight when your ultimate is down. It's far too important to Renekton. Ping your spells and ult timers at proper moments to keep your team updated on your combat reliability. Your job in team fights is to dive after the enemy backline and kill off their damage carries. It's your team's job to follow your engage, but applying frontline pressure so the enemy frontline can't turn on you without punishment. In most cases, the presence of a Renekton in the area will deter a lot of fights, unless the enemy is just too out of control to be stopped. When the game is even, Renekton is generally strong at zoning enemies off because no one wants to get blown up by his burst. When fights do break out, try to get on their main threats for a kill thaw will be extremely beneficial for your team. This is made easier by using the active of Yamu's Gospelder Ghost to charge after your target. Its new ability to pass through units is especially helpful. Refrain from landing the auto before your W stun and just stun immediately. More often than not, trying to get that auto in has made things awkward for me, or gives them time to flash or use any other forms of broken mobility ADCs are gifted with. Serylda's Grudge is a great item for team fights because you will almost always fight with your ultimate active. This means anyone in range of your Sandstorm will be slowed by 30%, making it easier to chase, kite, or slow enemies for ally skill shots. Once your target is dead, consider quickly if you can stay in the fight or need to get out if able. While Renekton can make some big plays even at low health, you probably just used your Q and W, so you'll need time to get them back. If you are running my team fight build, you will be able to sit in battle when you have 3 items and more because your cooldowns will be so. Now, for split pushing. As a split pusher, you will solo lane for much more time than most other players and gain a level lead in an even game. Your goal is to draw attention away from objectives or punish the enemy team if they don't address your push. As Renekton, you don't blow through towers as quickly as say, Tryndamere, Nasus, or Yorick. What Renekton has as an advantage is his combat threat. Renekton is more likely to require 2 or more people to stop his push than the others. You will want to solo farm by default and only break that behavior for opportunities to pick up kills and set up objectives. Split pushing isn't a jack of all trades move though. You have to choose your pushes wisely. If your team has no pressure on the map, you don't need to be overextending. If your team is pushing bot lane, then push top. The same goes for objectives. Push the opposite lane from the objective to hopefully draw people away. Push the closer lane if you're the only thing that decides success for the objective, or push the mid or nearest lane if you don't have teleport and they will need you to secure it. As a pusher, your job is to create pressure on the map, and it's your team's job to complement that pressure. If your team all dies while you're away, you will be likely forced to back off the push since there's nothing keeping the enemy team from 5v1. And for his counters. First is Vayne. Vayne is a pain. She is way too mobile and can even launch you backwards. 100% have you and your jungler bully her. She deserves for going top lane anyway. She's more mobile than you, scales against any armor you build, and can knock you back and potentially stun you anytime you engage. She's specially crafted to be borderline impossible to fight with melee champions. If you must fight her, be very aggressive once you reach level 2 and try to use any misplays she makes against her. Use the brush as cover, and if she wards it, she'll have less vision to see ganks coming. She scales super hard into the late game and goes top lane to bypass her weak laning phase, so shutting her down is mandatory. Next is Darius. Darius is major 3.he is getting less oppressive, but I'm keeping him in major threats because of how easily you can lose this matchup with the tiniest mistake. If he gets the first kill, it will be a rough lane, but if you get the first 2 kills, you're in good shape. Make an empowered W your last hit before dashing out of a trade so he can't pull you back in. Failure to do so will get you killed. Once he is half HP, look for a kill, but you must avoid his Q sweet spot. I take Ghost versus this matchup, so he can't outspeed you with spells unless he has Nimbus and you don't. And for Nasus, he is an even matchup. The game meta is shift in Nasus's favor and against Renekton, so this has been moved up into even. You beat him in most fights, Nasus wins lane if you can't kill him at least 3 times and deny him farm. A good Nasus knows how to farm under tower while you're forced to stay overextended. You need a competent jungler for this matchup so you can properly get a lead for your team while Nasus is small. Your JG should look to invade when you're pressed up, go for Herald and look for dives. Bad junglers will ignore Nasus top and let him free farm. Nasus has cheaper core items than Renekton, so you may feel a temporary power shift when he completes his first armor item and boots. I rush a last whisper if he's scaling armor. Nasus is also a nightmare to fight if his jungler camps you. His wither is basically your instant doom in many cases.